Hello everybody, my name is Octavia and I'm currently teaching English for Specific Purposes at the Specialized Languages Department at the Faculty of Letters, Babeș-Bolyai University in Cluj-Napoca, Romania. I'm glad to be here today. It's very hot in Romania. I don't know in your countries, but here it's, hope I won't lose my coherence due to the heat. Now, my topic, which I proposed for today, is a case study on the relevance of the linguistic choices in ESP teaching. Now, why a case study and why linguistic choices in ESP teaching? This is because not long ago I came across this great book called What We Say and How We Say It Matter. Now, I have a background in cognitive linguistics, and I somehow knew that all the time while teaching, I had this, let's say, awareness of the fact that my discourse was influencing my students. Anyways, now going through this book, which I kind of recommend it to you if you have time this summer, it's quite interesting. It gave me all sorts of idea, and then I started to think about my discourse and the fact that I actually create reality through my discourse. Now, cognitive linguistics and teaching in metaphors, I will come back to that a little bit later. It basically says that our thinking is metaphorical and we kind of tend to grasp reality using metaphors. But as I said, I will come back to that later. How much does my discourse matter to my students? Now, a case study because I actually wanted to measure the impact of my discourse upon my students, if possible, of course. So I decided to do a 1 year case study in terms of trying to apply all the measures and all the methods which helped me, let's say, quantify the impact of my discourse. Now, for 1 semester, the steps I planned. So I started from simple things. That was first language awareness. What do I mean by that? I mean that I had to choose all the specific linguistic choices, and I had to have a repertoire of them. So those would be the linguistic choices and the type of discourse I will use this semester. So I had to have it clear in my mind. And then step two, I was focusing to grab attention. And when I say attention, in psychology, attention is divided. So there is sustained attention, which we work with in our students when we are teaching face to face, and then we have focused attention, which we basically we make extensive use of it, especially in online teaching. And since we've been going through this remote teaching experience, we had this shift towards focused attention. Now, if sustained attention, for example, is also known as concentration and is the ability to focus on one thing for a continuous period of time. During this time, people keep their focus on the task at hand and continue to engage in a behavior until the task is complete or a certain period of time has elapsed. Now, focused attention, on the other hand, let me read the scientific definition to you. Now, this type of attention involves being able to be suddenly drawn to a specific visual, auditory, or tactile stimuli such as loud noise or a flash of light. It is a way of responding rapidly to external stimuli, which can be particularly important in situations where something in the environment requires immediate attention and quick action. Then I had in mind to boost engagement. Actually, that's what I wanted to do, to reach my objectives, to know how to go towards my objectives in terms of content, grabbing attention and boosting studying engagement in my students. And thus, of course, the final step should be better studying results, which again had to be measured. So not only, feeling that your students have somehow grown in learning, but to be palpable, something that you can measure. Uh, the hypothesis questions for me, first one was this course can help in improving active attention in students. So somehow I wanted to demonstrate that the type of discourse we use can boost attention or can lower attention. And the second question of my research is that linguistic choices can influence boosting engaging studying environment. Now, in terms of what exactly, what types, what words we choose semantically, we can, let's say, we can create a comfortable and an appealing environment for our students, or on the other side, we can probably lose their attention. Now, as I said, a few words about conceptual metaphor theory and mental spaces theory was one of the first theoretical frameworks identified as part of the cognitive semantics field. Its basic premise is that metaphor is not just a stylistic feature of language, but metaphor is embedded in the way we build our world using representations or conceptual metaphors. In other words, thought itself is metaphorical in nature. According to these statements, conceptual structure is organized according to cross-domain mappings. Now, to put it simple, it means that let's say one domain of expertise, something that we know, okay, we have the experience of, will always be interpreted and used to explain a target domain, something that we don't know about. And we have here, for example, mappings for love is the journey. Most of the time, we use metaphors for almost everything in our daily lives. For example, these cross-domain mappings we use as the source journey for the target source love. So we want to explain love as a journey, because the couple goes into a journey together and they are discovering things and so on. Or we sometimes call the love relationship as a vehicle because it takes you somewhere. Or we again interpret events as a journey. Most probably you have all heard about metaphors of life is a journey. So that's exactly why, because you have all kind of events going on, and that's definitely a journey. So that's what conceptual metaphor theory sustains. And starting from this point, I kind of chose the metaphors which I used in my teaching over the past year. Now, I put simple just the phases of, there are two stages for meaning construction, building mental spaces, and two, the establishment of mappings between mental spaces. And this is an example that you have here. Lakov says that somehow we tend to interpret, morality in terms of transactions. And the example here is that if you do me a big favor, I will be indebted to you. So what I did was to recalibrate all my teaching discourse in such a way as to use appropriate metaphors for my new teaching input. The method I used for during all my seminars, I used three types of collating data. First one, personal notes, personal observations. I took personal notes after each and every seminar. Then I had groups interviews where we talked about all these aspects in an online interviews. And then I had a survey, which was kind of part of a much greater needs analysis. So I used a part of my overall needs analysis as the basis for detecting discourse impact as well. Now, the focus groups of my research were comprised. I divided my students in two groups. So I had the reference group, the one which went on in my normal, let's say, teaching style, and then the second group was they had the same syllabus but recalibrated in terms of discourse and linguistic choices. Now, they were all first-year students majoring in environmental science and engineering. You can see here the details of my students. Okay, so as I said, there were two groups. Looks like I'm running out of time, so let's just I will just brief you in on these two. So two groups, 49 students and 59 students. I tried to balance them as much as possible. Now, the linguistic selection here, I really want to say a few words about it because it's, first of all, I thought about the content of what I had to teach for that year. I knew the profiles of my groups, and somehow the linguistic choices were done according to these two. For example, comparative language. I paid attention not to use comparative language in group number two. What's that? It's when you usually your students do all sorts of activities and you say, oh, well, great, this is good, this is, and so on. I didn't, so I stepped into a neutral state of things from my vocabulary point of view. Then I avoided pseudo open-ended questions, like when we did a new activity, instead of asking in what way can this activity help you discover, I wouldn't use such questions anymore. I was direct and clear. So actually what I did was I thought proactively by envisioning what an activity would look like, but at the same time how an activity would sound like, and anticipate challenges. Now, I gave up using please and thank you when setting expectations because whenever we say please, for example, it kind of makes it optional. So drop it out. Then thank you, I took it out from my vocabulary because students had the impression, this is from my observation notes afterwards, but if I said, for example, I was setting a home assignment and saying thank you made it somehow, students were like, well, she thanked me for it, I don't have to do it anymore. So okay, this is my cat, she wants to say hi. Okay, then positive messaging languages, and this one I have to say it was great for my students. They really wanted it, and it really worked in my teaching. Then use of narrative and metaphors. What use of narratives in terms of use stories and metaphorical language. Then I use technical challenging vocabulary. I paid attention to have an input in terms of vocabulary because I teach to applied sciences students, biology, environmental sciences, engineers. So I implemented like new items of vocabulary representing processes and boost attention. They were quite intriguing for them. Use of cognitive terminology. So I owned in the tasks which I applied, and while doing the scaffolding for the online activities in asynchronous meetings, I only use cognitive verbs like evaluate, apply, speculate, interpret. Then I reduce the teacher pleasing language. Like, for example, if before, instead of say, wow, this is great, I love how you did it, I would simply say it's this is a good work. It's probably the best, I don't know, idea that you have so far, that you did so far. Somehow I try to increase student ownership of learning. So instead of saying, I have an exciting activity planned for you today, I went towards, you are going to get to try a very interesting activity, language activity today. So kind of I shifted from teacher-focused language to student-focused language, and so on. So now, just a few words about the responses of my students. Of course, I wouldn't have time to present to you all the results of my surveys here, just an overall interpretation, but a very interesting aspect which has to be mentioned is the fact that during the needs analysis and the survey, at the question, what is the teacher behavior that you find irritating in your classes? It's amazing that I expected, to have answers such as, I don't know, she's giving us too much homework, and let's say I'm talking about myself, or she's late, or, any types of functional things or administrative or things, but all the responses were from the communication sphere. As you can see, when the teacher talks a lot, this is communication. The constant repetition of a word or sentence, communication. Professors making ironic or sarcastic jokes, this is pragmatic inferences. And so they all had to do with this communication sphere. So it kind of, verified my research hypothesis. And then just short, just a few words. Let's say, do you like when your teacher calls you on your name? All of them said yes. So they want to be addressed directly, or some other example of questions from the survey, because there were many questions. Do you like to be consulted when your teachers do you like to be consulted by your teachers in different aspects of your language? So most of them said yes, and that's because it helps increase student ownership of language. So the moment they own their studying and their learning process, they become effective and they love it. Another questions, are you self-aware of your language level right now? 80% said yes, which was quite amazing. For the first time this year, they boosting intrinsic motivation through reflection. They kind of became aware of their linguistic level. Then choose the expression. I had questions like they had to choose among different linguistic expressions. Then how important is for a teacher to promote joyful learning? Now this is very important for all of them, and probably this is because it was remote teaching and online classes, so joyful learning and joyful teaching was a must. Now, what do I mean by promoting joyful learning? I try to do things challenging for them, and I framing activities in a very challenging way. But this is, we need to pay attention to this one, because if an activity is boring, for example, for myself, I wouldn't frame it as interesting for them. So, and in the book that I read, which I told you in the beginning about, it's this expression which I love: don't put a lipstick on a pig. Okay, they will know it in no time. Yeah, well, the result, because I have to end my presentation. I think I have 1 minute left. In terms of group review, as you can see here, okay, group 1, according to my data, they had difficulties in concentration and lower interest in new assignments, whereas group 2, they had better results in tests, and they really had focus improvements. So I could notice myself that they were very focused and very attentive to whatever was going on in the seminar. And the result interpretation of the observation notes. So after reading my notes, and there were so many, group number 2 had motivation problems. So online teaching seemed a burden to them. They had attention gaps and lack of interest for different assignments, whereas group number 2, they had better essays, because we had a part of our course is academic writing, so they had better essays, and probably this is because they could use their imagination. I spotted focus improvements and is in the use of imagination, prone to communication, which my students, coming from an applied sciences profile, they are not prone to communication. So if possible, they are not talkative students at all. So I even noticed all these improvements. Okay, a few limitations of the current study. Of course, I had a lot of pluses: boosting studying environment, increased ownership of learning, improves attention. So basically, my hypotheses were proven to be valid. In terms of limitations, it's probably the results were a little bit influenced by the fact that the teaching was done online and not into a face-to-face interaction. And the limitation here comes with the fact that communication, it's more than half of communication is non-verbal behavior. So without the gesturing and without the whole package of communication, probably there could be a mismatch in some of the study results. Then for the next research, which I quite intend to conduct, I think I would choose a fewer linguistic choices for future testing, because it was overwhelming. I had too many, and I had to recalibrate all the discourse. And at the same time, I had to do the teaching, I had to do the monitoring, I had to do the observation, and all these roles. And then another problem which could be is that some of the students didn't sign the agreement to be recorded, and that's if they agree, then you don't have to do the observation part like that at on the going. But otherwise, okay, thank you very much for paying attention. This was the idea of my study for today, and I intend in the future to develop it on a larger scale. So if you're interested to cooperate, why not just PM me, and who knows, maybe we can work together. Now, if you have questions, I would be more than happy to answer to you.